children of the moon. You left us now way too soon. Come, children of the moon. Come, children of the moon. And I'm losing you, children of the moon. And I'm losing you, children of the moon. Live life, spirit that's just a lie. You told me, show us somehow the place beyond the sky.
Dorian, thanks for coming back on the show and doing this, man. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
You know, my fandom of you goes way back, to the Blues Pills days. And
Yeah.
right at the time Blues Pills was coming out, seemed like the right time for a lot of music like that to be coming out of Europe, especially like, Sweden, Finland area, you had bands like Graveyard, Lycanthropy, bands like that. I feel like everyone was kind of Jess and the Ancient Ones, it was like you kind of all were kind of coming in like together. At the time, did you realize that there was this kind of a movement that was happening?
A little bit. I think so, yeah, for sure. Because a lot of us were also signed to Nuclear Blast at the time, but I didn't quite realize how much of a scene it was. It was really like awesome to be a part of it. I realize it now because the scene is still going on, but it's definitely changed. I've been hearing on the last tour, people say the headliners of nowadays are bands that were the opening bands 10 years ago. And it got me thinking, and I was like, damn, it's kind of right, actually, because I remember a lot of those bands touring now. Now they're quite big, playing headlining slots and stuff. So the scene has changed, and definitely, over 10 years ago now, 2012 to maybe 2015 or something was when all of these bands were coming out and getting attention, and those bands are still around. So it's kind of interesting to see how things have evolved and how bands are kind of taking different directions. So it feels like this scene is a bit more spread out somehow.
Yeah, and it also seemed to me, and I loved what you said, because that was the 2012, 2013 was when I first, became aware of you at the time in Blues Pills, and again, Graveyard, Jess and the Ancient Ones, to me, those three bands, in my opinion, were the kind of forerunners of that kind of new scene coming in. And I always thought it was interesting because one of the things I used to tell people is that you guys seem to play American music better than Americans. As a young person, I mean, as a guitar player, you have a lot of sounds like American, influence to your playing. Where did that come from, being that you were a kid in France growing up?
Yeah. Somehow, as soon as I could hear music, my dad was playing some ZZ Top on cassette in the car, and I must have been 3 or 4 years old. I was so young that I probably would not even remember a band name. So he said I was so stoked about it the first time I heard ZZ Top, just electric guitar riffs. And I was like, what is this, as a very young child? And I remember he said that's motorcycle music,
I love it.
He had to describe it. I was so young, and he saw I was so into it that the next Christmas I got a greatest hits ZZ Top, where you see half naked ladies, and it's full mostly 80s hits. But I was hooked, just the sound of electric guitar. And then I discovered over time a bunch of other music. Rory Gallagher was huge influence early on too. He's not an American player, but
Right.
I guess also had a lot of his influences going to early American music and blues. And so I was really early on just, yeah, really into blues and blues rock and all that 60s, 70s style music. And I never really listened to French music. That's something some French people have a hard time with me, like trying to get me to sing in French or asking why I don't, yeah, I'm not into French music. And it's a different sound, you know. French language is really romantic and has a lot of things going for it, but the way it sounds when you play like rock music, it just doesn't ring.
You're like, I don't want romance, I want naked girls.
So yeah, for sure, American music has been and continues to be a huge influence.
Well, I gotta say, dude, congrats on the new album, The Children of the Moon.
Thank you.
It was such a great progression, though, from Hungry Ghost. Children of the Moon still has that folk vibe, but you really kind of incorporated like almost more of like a traditional folk sound with kind of percussive elements and even having it be a little darker. So what happened between Hungry Ghost and Children of the Moon that kind of shaped that for you?
Well, many things, because I guess when I wrote those songs, they kind of came from a similar place as Hungry Ghost. In some ways, they were written in a similar way, just me and my acoustic guitar and a lot of crazy open tunings. But then I knew the way I made demos back then already that I wanted to have more of a full band thing, something that I couldn't really do on Hungry Ghost because we recorded that EP on tape, just one microphone in a couple days, Swedish winter. And I like that vibe too, you know, kind of like Nick Drake inspired Pink Moon vibe, you know, really. So that was kind of like, I was happy about that, but I knew for the album I didn't want to do like 10 songs that would be just acoustic guitar and vocals. I wanted to expand on the musical aspects. And basically I came back to France after leaving Blues Pills, and I took a little while to get things started again. And once I did, basically is when COVID hit. And during that time, I became friends with the two guys that play with me on the record, apart from the backing vocals. It's two brothers that have their own band here in France called Moondrag.
Oh, okay. Never heard of them.
Yeah, they're like a prog duo, organ and drums duo. They're really good, like Atomic Rooster inspired and Emerson, Lake and Palmer kind of stuff, you know, like 20 minutes prog songs. They're really good musicians and they really get what I was going for kind of with my album. So that's where the kind of full band element came in. So there is a lot of all the songs have like percussions or drums or both, and then a lot of keys like piano and Fender Rhodes and organ and mellotron. And all of these are real instruments. Like it's an actual tape mellotron, something you don't see really often. Even when I get to mixing the record, the mixer that's called also Don, he's the guy that produces the latest Graveyard and the early Graveyard stuff. So he was actually mixing their record, finishing their record, the latest record, as he was mixing my record.
Now, do you tend to get involved pretty heavily with the mixing process?
I guess, yeah. Throughout this record, I've been involved like pretty heavily, I guess, on every aspect, and also now as I'm releasing it, doing a lot of the promotional stuff myself. But so for the mixing, I definitely knew that if I could, I would have Don mix it, because he's just the best I know doing that kind of mixing and really also making it sound analog, like old school style, which is something that I feel is missing in a lot of production, is a lot of overproduced, highly compressed that I didn't want on my record. So So that was the decision going with him. I knew like once I went to Sweden for a week to be there as he was mixing. So I was just super stoked to see how he does it. And but I was not really telling him how to do anything. He knows how to run his things. I was pretty much trusting him. So it's also been about finding the people I trust for certain things and just being fully like, yeah.
I always found that it's kind of hard to remove myself a little bit and kind of go, okay, I can't listen to it as the player. I have to listen to it from the audio aspect of it.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to detach, if that's what you mean from. And I guess I have a couple things. At times I have some friends that I know would tell me what they think, and I trust also their opinion. So I've also like sent around some stuff if I wasn't sure, that sort of things. Or also like about mixing, I feel like mixing analog was really a different experience from mixing digital on the computer. And I've made a lot of demos and mixed digital with for some stuff that thankfully I haven't released, because afterwards I was, you spend like hours on maybe like some small little details and you don't really see the full picture, that's kind of. And so with mixing this album, it was really like everything was happening in the mixing desk. There was no plugins used. So the reverb is like a plate reverb. The EQ is the EQ from the mixing desk. And so when it's like that, you can't really be like, oh, maybe it's 1 dB. It's more of like the whole thing sounds good. And I was like, yeah, that's it. And so I haven't really like been listening that closely to the small details, but more like the overall feeling. So that's been also like for the mixing, like that's how I've done it for the record, kind of. I messed around with digital in the meantime. I did actually I did a whole like pre-production for the Children of the Moon during COVID when there was lockdown and I had so much time on my hands. I did a lot of stuff and then over-mixed it. And maybe some of that stuff would be good for radio and stuff, actually, but it just was not what I was going for. I realized pretty quickly afterwards. I basically was like, it was overproduced and I added some Moog synthesizers, which can be cool, old school, but all of that just kind of like was not necessary. So when it came to making actually the record, that was the pre-production that I ended up sending around to labels and stuff. But so I didn't release that, and that was fully digital. And then making the record, I wanted to do something much more organic.
Right.
So no metronome. Most of it is live, like the drums and keys and acoustic guitar on all the tracks are live. We're in different rooms, but we can see each other, that's right. Sort of. So, and then even the backing vocals, they were all three of them in the same room doing it at the same time, just like their own mics. So everything was kind of a living, organic experience making that record and then also mixing it. So yeah, I've pretty much only done analog releases now that I think about it. Somehow I've gotten away with.
It's so much better suited for this kind of music anyway, because when you're already doing music that is very that's very much of a almost kind of a primitive nature, because the acoustic guitar is such a, it's what's been around for so long, and so when you can capture it the closest to its natural element.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's something I'm really happy about the record, is like I feel like we captured that, like it's a living experience.
So when you left Blues Pills after when you put out the Hungry Ghost album, I remember thinking like this was not where I thought you were going to go, because I was like, this dude's like a rock guitar god over there, like on the stage, just like ripping it up. And then you come out with this beautiful, almost kind of like melancholy kind of folks that like, what steered you into that direction?
I think deep down, I wanted to write my own songs. Like I felt like I couldn't, like there was only so far you can go shredding the guitar, sort of. That was kind of maybe where it came from. And I had been in like more and more into folk music since I was a teenager, discovering Neil Young and then digging deeper into folk music. So that was happening kind of at the same time as I was kind of like wanting to write songs and see like, so not being so focused on the guitar basically. And then when I started writing my own songs, it turned out they were kind of more in that folky style. So that's kind of how it came about.
I was really hearing things like David Crosby and Buffy St. Marie and Joan Baez, you know, where it was like you were really doing some cool things with some tunings and whatnot, but yet you still kind of had this very 60s-ish like feel to it. So what is it about that era of folk music?
Yeah, the Laurel Canyon folk thing was a huge influence making the record. And also I remember with the two brothers and the backing singers, we the influence was a lot of Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Oh yeah.
Or obviously for the harmonies, because it's a lot of backing vocals on this album as well. That was a new thing for me. And also rearranging the songs with the two brothers. We were listening to a lot of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. The Deja Vu record for like the way we made the songs was
incredible. Yes,
definitely that was a big inspiration. And also Pentangle.
Yes.
So we kind of crossed. I remember when we were like arranging the songs, we were kind of going for sometimes a Pentangle feeling, so a little bit more that jazzy or and then sometimes more for the Deja Vu. And also like other artists, like I love Crosby, Nash, Young, Stills individually as well, like listen to their solo records a bunch. And so that's been an inspiration in every aspect, and specifically, songwriting. And also artists like Judy Seal, you know?
No.
Judy Seal. I think I'm not sure if she was friends with. Graham Nash produced a couple of stuff for her. She, I think, passed away kind of early on, but was part of that scene as well a little bit. So yeah, a lot of those artists from that era for me is like the golden era for sure. And I like the stuff before. I like some of the stuff after as well, but I kind of from this album, I really wanted it to feel like it was made in like 69, 1971 sort of vibe, you know.
There was a growth there, you know, and within the lyrics. And was that from just like experiencing from touring on your own, or like so what was it like, what was the big thing that kind of inspired you lyrical writing to be significantly different on this album?
Well, that's going to be kind of hard to pick because I try not to analyze much of that. But the lyrics were definitely important for every song, and every song has a message. And a lot of the time for those songs, the lyrics would come to me at the same time as everything else. The melody, it would basically be like I would find a tuning and get a feeling for a song and start having a melody that would have words in it. So, and usually it would become a song once I kind of like know what I'm trying to express in my own life, because it's usually something that happened also in my life or events. So all of that went into the writing. And then I guess I also kind of took a little while to just reflect and made sure it was all flowing the way I wanted it to flow. But that's something I feel keeps evolving, because I feel like I've gone even further now in the the more recent songs I wrote. So
Yes.
yeah, lyric writing stays something kind of mysterious in a way, and the more I get to express something that I can't really say into words normally, then I get, I feel like I've done something.
I noticed that a lot about some of these songs too. They do have a very personal nature to them.
Yeah.
As a writer yourself, is it nerve-wracking, gratifying? Like, what is it like? Is that a hard thing for you to kind of grasp, or is it more like a release for you?
Yeah, I feel like it's probably a bit more nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But my whole thing was to be authentic. I guess it can sound a bit cheesy, but it goes with the like organic way of making music. And that was my whole thing also, like going into folk music. I felt like I could really like just be, I don't know if I want to say vulnerable, but in rock and roll, you can't really sing about some of this stuff, like it's a lot of lyrics that don't really mean much in rock music.
So I feel like with rock music, sometimes there's it's like a barrier that keeps you from being overly transparent or vulnerable, like you said. And even if the songs do mean something and come from a certain place, I always feel like that when you're playing rock music, though, you're kind of guarded. But there's a vulnerability to folk music where, especially when it's just you and a guitar, that's all you have.
Yeah, and that was kind of my whole thing, like having the guards down so that would not be in the way of the music as well,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you want to write about a specific thing, or you don't want to write about something that's too vulnerable, or you're afraid of doing it, or I feel like that would be missing out on something if the inspiration is there. So, but it certainly then has been difficult at times to explain those songs to people in certain circumstances, or just putting them out into the world, it can be more difficult when it's like an open book about something really personal, but it ends up being gratifying, I think. And yeah, I'm doing it to be authentic and do something that's real, pretty much, like the music being recorded real. I feel like the lyrics have to reflect that as well. And
I always feel like the rock thing is almost a very physical thing, whereas the folk thing is a very emotional thing. And and so when you're playing these songs live, I just from my own memory of when I would play live, is that vulnerability is doubled, because now not only are you singing, not only are people hearing your songs, but now you're presenting it to them in a setting where you're like, okay, now I have to watch you react to certain things. How does that change your perspective on your songs?
Yeah, it's a really different experience to play that kind of music live as opposed to a rock band really loud. And some of my favorite shows, solo shows, have been the most intimate ones. The ones that, it's almost like full unplugged, like those have been my favorite ones, where it's so intimate. And it's definitely a different experience than being at a rock show and people getting drunk and all that stuff. And I've also done folk shows to crowds that were more into partying and all that stuff, and that's also tricky. That's probably the trickiest thing, and I've done it. It works, but it's definitely a different kind of environment for that kind of music, for sure, in a live environment. But once I feel like the people are getting into the music, it creates really something special that I don't get in the rock environment. People have a different experience, they close their eyes, and I've seen people cry. I've seen people really having almost spiritual experience, where it's more like a moment that we share together in that sense. Like it's definitely a different vibe. And what I like to do nowadays is kind of doing both, because I've been touring with El Perro. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, with Parker from Radio Moscow.
Yeah, so
I was going to ask you about that actually, because that's like the total opposite.
Yeah, I know. And so for me, it's actually perfect, because I get to do my folk thing and express myself creatively and all that stuff. And then once in a while, when I miss the loud guitar and just that stuff I still like, El Perro has been really fun for sure. So it's a good balance, because for a while I was kind of missing one, and I didn't really know like I could have both, or how to find a balance. And that seems to be working. Like I really enjoy playing loud music again, and riffing and electric guitar, and then it's always like a great thing to go back to my own music. And also that combined keeps me busy, which is from the start of the conversation what I've been trying to do. So
I know that dynamic, that balance is such a great thing to have, because when you're like hyper focused on doing one thing, it's exciting, but then all of a sudden, like you might hit these moments where you're just kind of like, oh, God, I need to do something different. I need to take a break. When you have that break to do something, but that's like the total other spectrum, it's almost like it's enough to make you miss the other. You're doing the folk, you miss the rock stuff. When you're doing the rock, you miss them. So, it's like you never really get tired, because you're able to go back and forth.
Yeah, that's exactly it, actually. Like I started to feel like, damn, I'm looking forward to go back on tour with El Perro. Like it's gonna be like vacations, because I've been like just doing a bunch of doing a lot of social medias and stuff you got to do when you put out new music. But then I do like 22 shows in a row with El Perro, and I'm like, damn, I can't wait to be back and just chill in the sunshine with my acoustic guitar,
It's like, it's starting to get so loud. Oh my God. Well, so speaking of touring, like, are you going to be touring pretty extensively behind this one? And if like what are your plans?
Yeah, that's the plan. But I don't have a booking agent at the moment. Mm-hmm. So I've been trying to book shows on my own, and it makes it a bit more tricky. So pretty much, yeah, that's going to be the plan. I'm trying to get some shows and do full band gigs as well, as the album is full band. So I've been
that would be fantastic.
Yeah, with because I've been doing a lot of solo and duo shows with a keyboard player, so it works well for the smaller places and more intimate. But I've been practicing with a rhythm section as well, so we'll be like keyboard, Hammond, and a rhythm section, and then I can bring out the electric guitar as well. We can do more jamming and stuff, so I'd like to bring that element too on like some live settings and shows.
Are you gonna find yourself trying to translate some of the Hungry Ghost stuff into kind of a band setting?
Yeah,
and if so, how has it gone?
I've done Hungry Ghost, especially Hungry Ghost will work in the band setting, and also Need to Love, because it's on the record as a band. But then the other two songs I probably wouldn't do as a full band. I don't see. I would probably do them just on my own if I want to do them live,
So what is the deciding factor to you when this would sound great with a band, or this won't sound great with a band? Like, what is it that wouldn't sound great with a full band for the two tunes you were just talking about?
Yeah, it's kind of tricky because you never really know, but the two tunes I'm talking about, they're so like in that vulnerable element that I feel like adding especially a drums would be too much. I feel like I love drums, but I feel like sometimes in folk music it can be a bit too harsh, like a snare drum and
yes,
it can also almost ruin some folk stuff if it's done the wrong way,
Completely can.
So that would be my fear with those two, and And yeah, I feel like I definitely want to keep some dynamics where I probably will do a couple songs on my own, even with a full band setting.
Mm-hmm.
So it might happen that I just pick the songs that I feel are more like fitting to be played solo. But that's the cool thing with these songs. They kind of work mostly in different ways. Like I can do them for the album just on my own as a duo with backing vocals with a band.
Well, so I guess finally, like, so you're going to be doing some shows, you know, behind the album, and like, at what point do you start writing something else? Like, are you kind of like in a constant writing mode, or do you usually wait for a project to be done toward and then start writing again?
Always writing.
Okay.
Always writing. I guess there's different periods, and it kind of evolves.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been writing a lot since this record has been made, for sure. Almost like I feel like I wrote pretty much an entire record that I scrapped, and I wrote another one.
Do you usually have to put yourself in a certain element to write, or like, you know, like do you need do you write at night? Do you write do you know what I mean? Do you have a specific setting that you like, that you feel like works the best for you, or do you just like wherever you're at, you feel like you can just cut loose creatively?
I feel like the thing that helps the most is to be mostly on my own.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird to say, or not totally isolated, but have a moment where there's no distraction, and then I guess the muse will come whenever it comes. It's pretty much like I try to act on it if I feel something, and I know I can't really control it either. So there's not like a specific setting. Like that would almost be off the point if I try to like make it up so that I write a song. Then I'm probably not gonna write a song because I've tried to, just the act of, So it's a really delicate thing. So what I do, I feel nowadays, is kind of always try to be aware of that moment where I can get a song idea. And it's kind of harder on tour, but I still do it on tour, where I get my voice memos, and I get melodies, and I bring a notebook. And so I'm always like either writing lyrics, try to get melodies, and then sometimes those things kind of combine. I have like some words I wrote and a melody I got like the week after, and somehow those two work together. So it's kind of always, I try to stay open to that, and then try to take a step back to see if it's worth anything. I try to not think about it until the song is pretty much done. Like I do a demo, I get the feeling, I record it, I write it, I try to finish it as much as I can on the spot while not overthinking it. And then I try to listen back later as an observer, and see if I still groove to it.
That's interesting how you were talking about that, because I feel like the songs that I'm the happiest with, or that I'm the most proud of when I've written them, are the ones that, like, when you finish writing them, you're kind of like, where did that come from?
Yeah, exactly. I pretty much, I don't think I've ever, I don't force it for that reason.
Yeah.
I never force it, but I try to write as many as possible in that feeling you describe, and then see which one lasts, in some ways.
Well, dude, this was great catching up with you.
Hell yeah.
Congratulations on the album. It's absolutely fantastic. So when is the release? When does it come out?
June 14th.
June 14th, man. So are you so you should be very proud of it, man. It's an incredible record, and it's such a nice thing. I always look forward to hearing what you're going to do, and I always look forward to talking to you, man. So this was great, Dorian.
Thank you, man. Thanks for being supportive since the beginning, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad you like the record.
It's fantastic. Well, good luck with everything, Dorian.
You too, man.
Why won't you take just a little more?
your back.